Before we get started on an update on a case that we are charging someone with murder, we want to update on the officer's condition that was, we briefed early this morning, and kind of a little bit of an update. So as you know, 2 officers were shot early this morning, and I'm going to just go over the incident again, just in case some of you may not have heard all of it. But they were taking a lunch break, basically. They were working an overnight shift, and it's 3:30 in the morning. They're at 3800 West Harrison, and they're getting, one of the officers gets out of the car, the other officer stays in the squad car. One get in line to get a hot dog, basically, and the offender, unbeknownst to them, is in line ahead of them, completing his order and getting ready to pay for his order of food, and the offender reaches into his pocket, pulls out money, but a gun falls out and hits the ground. The offender picks up the gun and without any warning began shooting at the officer, striking one officer with a graze wound to the head, and the other officer, who's awaiting in the squad car, shoots 3 times into the squad car driver's side panel, striking him once in the leg. The offender then flees. Thank the good Lord that officers are nearby, and hear and see this happening, and capture the offender a few blocks away, along with recovering the gun. The officers, one officer is going to be held at the hospital for a few days. The other officer was released early this morning and is at home recovering. And that's the extent of what we know now. I'm assuming we'll have further information. There is video of this incident that we are retrieving, and obviously there were some witnesses around this area that our detectives will be talking with. Again, this incident is a stark reminder of that every hour of every day, the men and women in this department put their lives on the line. And it's another call to action to all of us to get guns off the streets of Chicago and out of the hands of individuals who should not have them. Any acts of senseless violence cannot be the norm in our city, because our department, as well as many of our partners, like Kim Fox, the state's attorney, and her staff, we are committed. We are committed to rendering this city safe. Now, that's why we're here today to announce murder charges against Moises Barrios of Cicero, that's spelled M-O-I-S-E-S, Barrios, B-A-R-R-I-O-S, of Cicero, and Pedro Mendiola, that's M-E-N-D-I-O-L-A, M-E-N-D-I-O-L-A, of Chicago. So Mr. Barrios and Mr. Mendiola are being charged with murder in the brutal attack and murder of Jose Talis on December 11th, 2021. Mr. Talis, a 49-year-old husband and father of 3, was doing what many of us do during the holidays, hanging Christmas lights outside his home. That's when Barrios and Mendiola pulled up in the 3500 block of West 58th Street at approximately 6:30 p.m. and began violently attacking him. The offenders were in possession of a baseball bat and a crowbar, and repeatedly struck Mr. Talis about the face and head as his young daughter, Mr. Talis's young daughter, watched from inside the home. As the young daughter tried to help her father, the offenders fled, and Mr. Talis succumbed to his injuries. This past Thursday morning, detectives worked with the Cook County State's Attorney to bring charges against the 2 offenders responsible for this unthinkable crime. In addition to first-degree murder charges, Barrios and Mendiola each face over 20 charges, including 9 felony counts of aggravated battery and use of a deadly weapon, and 10 felony counts of armed robbery. On the day of the murder, December 11, 2021, Barrios and Mediola traveled from the north side to the south side on a crime spree from approximately 3:30 until 8 p.m. They wreaked havoc, committing multiple robberies and attacking multiple people during this time frame. Officers and detectives on the scene and across the city worked tirelessly to solve this case. They worked with the Area Technology Center to collect video of these perpetrators from various locations throughout the city. In fact, we have some of the arresting officers here with us today whose excellent work helped solve these cases, and we just want to, again, highlight the dedication and commitment as well as bravery and courage of these officers in their work in capturing and helping us capture these suspects. These officers, along with detectives, work side by side with the state's attorney's office to bring charges. So there are no words really for this senseless and heinous act of violence, and there are no words that can lessen the pain and trauma Mr. Talas's daughter and family have endured. When one life is claimed by senseless violence, that's one life too many. When a parent or child is taken away from their family, that's one life too many. And when any Chicagoan second guesses their safety in any part of the city, that's one worry too many. Chicago Police Department hopes that bringing these offenders to justice brings some small measure of closure to the family as they grieve and continue to process this terrible, terrible tragedy. I'll turn it over to State's Attorney Kim Fox for comments, and then Chief of Detectives Brendan Dinahan will come with comments in more detail about this case and charging these two offenders.
Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you to the men and women of the Chicago Police Department for their tireless efforts to keep our community safe. As you indicated, it is a stark reminder of the dangers that they run into every day on behalf of our community. And on behalf of the members of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, I extend my gratitude for your efforts. Again, Superintendent Brown and I stand here today announcing charges in what can only be decried as a senseless, violent murder. But it's not just the murder of Mr. Tellez. There were 14 victims involved in this spree. One man dead, brutally murdered in front of his daughter. A community terrorized. I'm here today to once again thank our colleagues at the Chicago Police Department and the Assistant State's Attorneys in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office that worked on this case, and to again highlight the dedicated commitment to partnership and work that can bring some measure of solace to the Tellez family, the other victims, and particularly the Gage Park community. As the superintendent said, Tellez was doing what many of us were doing and should be expected to do at the holidays, hanging Christmas lights with his daughter before being tragically and senselessly beaten to death. This is a horrendous crime, and we stand here united to say that we will not allow such atrocities to happen in Gage Park or in any community here in this great city and in this great county. The offenders will be in bond court later this morning. You can watch the bond court on the Chief Judge's website. You can watch the hearing, and you will hear more details not only from Chief of Detectives Dinahan, but also from the state's attorneys in bond court, including a detailed recitation of their criminal history. Meanwhile, once again, I want you all to rest assured that the partnership between the Chicago Police Department and the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and our dedicated commitment to keeping our community safe remains strong and evident by the fact that we've continued to work this case for the last several months to bring some measure of justice today. Before I turn it over to Chief of Detective Dinahan, I hope to see many of you shortly as I release my 2021 Year in Review report that also highlights the work that our office has done, not just with the Chicago Police Department, but our partners throughout the county during these most challenging times. With that, Chief of Detective Dinahan.
Thank you. And we're just going to give a basic overview of what happened that day on the 11th of December. And as the state's attorney mentioned in bond court, both of these defendants will appear in bond court later today with an extremely detailed description of what occurred on the 11th of December. But on the 11th of December, these two individuals from approximately, like the superintendent mentioned, 3:30 in the afternoon until about 8 p.m. that night, went on a crime spree, starting in the north side of the city, ending up in the south side of the city, and along the way, robbing and beating people with a bat and a crowbar. And then, unfortunately, at 3505 West 58th Street at approximately 6:30 p.m. is when they saw the victim hanging the Christmas lights, and they decided that they were going to target him and rob him as well. And they got out with their bat and their crowbar, and unfortunately, the daughter heard the screams and saw in the window what was happening and tried to get her brother to help. By that time, the defendants had already beaten the victim to death and had fled the scene. So at this time, the detectives went to work on this case, and as you can imagine, we're talking about from the north side of the city to the south side. Robbery detectives from the north side were getting calls of these individuals that were doing this. Descriptions of the car were going out, and at that point, the 8th District officers were involved, and license plates were involved at that point, and these guys to my left here did a remarkable job of getting to the appropriate place where they actually took one of the defendants in custody, the very day that this happened, and that allowed the detectives then to do a search warrant on the vehicle where they recover the bat and the crowbar, and then that leads to fingerprints and DNA evidence, which kind of puts this whole case together. So I really want to thank the officers who did a remarkable job getting these guys before they had a chance to get away or destroy any evidence which may not have led to charges. So once again, the bat and the crowbar recovered, DNA evidence and fingerprints, and then as you can imagine, just trying to put all this together. The day that it occurs, these victims are reporting their robberies at different times, so it took a long time to put everything together. And unfortunately, with the murder case, it was probably the weakest video involved in all of these incidents. So basically, the detectives were working the strongest robbery cases as possible. The one defendant, Barrios, he gets charged that day, back on December 11th, with one of the robbery cases, and he was held in custody until we could secure the murder charges. The detectives worked all these cases in conjunction with the state's attorney's office, as the state's attorney and the superintendent just mentioned, and that's when we were able to secure an arrest warrant and arrest this second defendant, Mendiola, and place him into custody. So it was great work by all the individuals involved, and once again, without the cooperations of the citizens who are coming forward and providing the officers with the license plate information, description of the offenders, everything working together. Once again, the technology and running where this license plate is hitting, brings all this together. So it's never just one thing. And in this incident, as the superintendent, state's attorney mentioned, just completely senseless and completely tragic, for the family. So please keep that family in your prayers. Soup, turn it back over to you.
A few questions we'll take from anyone. Any questions? Oh, okay.
Or did you want to stay on topic?
No, go ahead. We'll bring Brendan back up. There's a lot of work still to be done. This happened at 3:30 in the morning, so just, 6 hours ago. So a lot of work to be done, but I'll have Chief Deanahan update you on when we suspect charges will be brought.
Sure. So he was just placed into custody, and as we kind of talking about working with the state's attorney's office, so we have approximately 48 hours to charge him. So I don't want to speculate on the charges, but obviously he attempted to kill a police officer, so that would be, one of the charges that we would be seeking. But we're just beginning the investigation, and once again, we do have video already, but we have a lot of work to do. And once again, the state's attorney's office already has sent assistant state's attorney, out there to work with the detective. So we have a long way to go, but obviously he's in custody, and we believe that we have the right person in custody, and we hope that we will charge this person within the next 48 hours.
Sure. Yeah. So when we captured the offender, he had tossed a gun nearby. Officers saw where the gun was tossed, recovered the gun. So the gun, when the offender was captured, wasn't on his person, but it was tossed nearby, and we do have possession of the gun and all the ballistics tests that we normally do to corroborate all of the evidence with this incident is ongoing. No, that's really not the reason. It really was a bang-bang moment. Drops the gun, picks it up, and fires immediately without warning at these officers. No time to draw their weapons and return fire. No time to activate their body cameras. But there is camera footage from the area that we are retrieving. Very, very close. It is, you know, we feel very blessed that we have non-life-threatening injuries of our officers. We feel very fortunate that we had officers nearby that quickly responded to be able to capture this offender blocks away and able to bring charges at some point in the next 48 hours. But you're exactly right. It really highlights the dangers of this job. It's split seconds really characterize the really stark danger of being a cop. One of the things that we have tried to convey over these last 2 years is obviously the dangers that our residents have been facing with this surge in gun violence. But there's been a 500% increase in officers shot at or shot these last 2 years. 500% increase. More than the increase in shooting, more than the increase in homicides. The 500% increase in officers shot at or shot is really the most stark data set over these last 24 months. These offenders have no regard for law enforcement, and yet our officers continue to put their lives at risk to protect us all. Any other questions? Yes. So a couple of things. I think what happened in this case, technology has become a major factor in solving these crimes. License plate readers, video cameras, and we're expanding our footprint in this city. Secondly, you know, participating in block clubs, in beat meeting, coordinating with your district, being aware of the alerts we send out. So, you know, getting to know the cops on the street, this idea of our positive community interactions being a major goal for our efforts is one of the things that we have really emphasized much more this year. I think the collaboration amongst the Chicago Police Department and the State's Attorney's Office, along with all of our state and federal partners and law enforcement, to include community groups. And this collaboration that we're building in the Community Safety Coordination Center that brings in social services, particularly focused on our youth, our young people, is all a part of our effort to stem the tide of gun violence and ensure that our safety and our perceptions of safety are what our citizens deserve. So it's a quite complex problem we face here in Chicago and across the country with increasing gun violence, but as of today, we're seeing some progress. It's been minimal, not satisfied with it, but 10% reduction in carjacking so far this year, a 5% reduction in shootings, a 3% reduction in homicides. That's all as of today. So again, not enough, not back to 2019, and that's really one of the things that I try to emphasize is that this is going to take all of us, and I always try to make the point, including media, characterizing what's happening to really stem the tide. The right messaging to residents, but also to offenders, that we will not tolerate gun violence in this city, and we will hold you accountable. That's the purpose of these pressers, and I really appreciate you all staying on topic with the questions you've asked today. I think that's more appropriate that offenders hear. We are bringing you to justice, and we are charging you with the highest appropriate charge to hold you accountable for the behavior, not only to hold you accountable, but hopefully to deter others from similar behavior. Any last questions? Of which suspects? I know they're adults. Brendan, you have the ages right quick? 23 and 21.
What about the suspect today?
Yeah, that one? Not yet. We'll get it to you.
But it's not a juvenile?
We don't believe so, but we'll confirm that. Number one, we've always been working together, and we've always been close together. We don't buy ink by the barrel, nor do we have TV time to edit what you convey. But we've had our disagreements, and that's been emphasized more than the many things we agree on. We agree on much more than we disagree. And the disagreements oftentimes leads to CPD improving what it can and bringing things to the state's attorney that more, full investigations. So we have work to do on ourselves, and we try to focus on that. But I think it's really important that people see us together. I just really think that's one of the things that can deal with the perceptions, not necessarily the reality that we always work together, but the perceptions that we work together is much more conveyed in pressures together, and so hopefully we'll do more of that. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that, Kim, at all.
That was good.
Okay. What I said.
Yes. What the superintendent said, listen, we're in a crisis of violence right now. And I think one of the unfortunate things in the midst of this crisis is that rather than focusing on the issues, there's been a focus on personality. The superintendent and I have always been aligned with the same mission, which is keeping our community safe. And what you'd seen in the past was a lot more about the dynamic between the superintendent and I's personality and not the work that was being done on the ground by the hardworking men and women of the Chicago Police Department and the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, who long before I arrived on scene, or Superintendent Brown, are dedicated public servants who've been doing this work. And so what we want to make sure in having events like this, where we highlight that collaboration that has always existed, is to show the people of Chicago and Cook County that we are working with them, alongside them, to keep our community safe. And in the hopes that at the next press conference, we don't have to address, why are you all standing together? Because this is what should be happening. And the less we talk about personality and the more we talk about problems, and even more significantly, solutions, the better the people of Cook County will be served.
Thank you all very much. We really appreciate it.